Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, thank you to our panel. This has been a very good subcommittee hearing, and the testimony has been wonderful. Dr. Bermudez, my questioning is primarily for you on our bill, on our eating disorders bill. And I would just like to ask you, you mentioned some of the myths that are associated with eating disorders. Can you just expand a little bit on what some of those myths are?
Absolutely. Thank you. The reality is that eating disorders affect everybody. Everybody's at risk. So if you know, if you
It's
have,
not just young
if you have
females.
sons and daughters, and if you have nieces and nephews, and if you have grandchildren, they're all at risk in a societal context like ours. So the key is not to is to take it away from the concept of choice. These are just people that sort of
Right.
choose to do this, and this is about lookism, and take it into the context of this is a brain-based mental illness that profoundly affects the lives of not only the person who's identified with the illness, but all of those affected and surrounding them as well. So that's one important shift. The other important shift is everybody's disease, every gender, every race, every ethnicity, every socioeconomic status, and so that no one is exempt because of who they are or what they look like. Those are, I think, the two important distinctions in dispelling the myths.
Now, as far as the most common eating disorders, I know we talked a little bit about anorexia. We talked about binge eating, which certainly we know that that's part of the bulimia nervosa. Do you also consider kind of along the line of the binge eating, those who are overweight and eating disorders associated with, maybe not the binge side of it, but the eating, we know that we have kind of an epidemic in this country of obesity. Would you consider that part of this too, or no?
So I think we need to make some distinctions and highlight some similarities. I think the main distinction that is really important, I think, for the public to understand is that obesity is a real problem in our country, but obesity in and of itself is not a mental health illness.
Correct. So, and that would be one of the clarifications that would be made in the process of treatment.
Absolutely. Okay. And so the other distinction that to me is really important, though, is that there are similarities, that there are potential advantages here. There's potential value to better understand and address some of the issues with obesity. Because at the end of the day, in a stressful living situation, in a complex society like ours, which really means that kids grow up with significant perceived stress, we tend to either eat too little or eat too much. But the reality is that the relationship between our developmental stance, our constant concept of self or self-view, and our relationship with food are integrally tied. So as we learn about prevention, as we better understand how to do early intervention and teach the frontline parents, teachers about what to recognize and the steps to take to secure more adequate next step assessments, not only would we be protecting the most vulnerable, but we will learn a whole lot about the resiliency factors that keep those that stay well. So we may very well learn how to keep them well. And along those lines, we may very well learn what happens when the eating goes not just towards binging or purging or anorexia, but simply eating too much and ending
Which
on
leads
the side
to
of
its
obesity.
own set of. You did mention that we've seen this in children as young as 7 or 8. So I have a very basic question. We are looking at middle school as starting the pilot program. Do you think maybe we should rethink that and maybe start it earlier?
I think based on the information that we know, the demographics of eating-related pathology that we know today, middle school is a critical place to start.
Okay.
It's a vulnerable time of life. It's a time when, in the normal process of separation, individuation, kids are beginning to sort of find their own path. Peer influence and cultural influences sort of are highlighted. So it's really a vulnerable time in life. Statistically speaking, I think this is really where the payoff is. But we should not ignore the fact that younger children may also be affected.
Very good. And I have one last question with 30 seconds left. I want to target where we were going with the eating disorder and early intervention and possibly not being able to make the goals that we want and leading to some of the physical illnesses that end up happening. And I know in your testimony, you basically said eating disorders are serious, potentially life-threatening conditions that affect a person's emotional and physical health. And it goes on to say that, it could affect your organs, going on to heart, brain, other vital organs, retarded growth, osteoporosis, kidney problems, gastrointestinal dysfunction, and even heart failure. With that in mind, and one of our biggest challenges here in Washington is being able to put forward legislation with funding, moving forward so that we can actually show that there is going to be progress made into the future, which will eventually lead to fiscal savings. When we're talking about things like Medicaid, Medicare coverage. Now, I know you were in eating disorders and that's your specialty, but in your medical background, would you not say that if we could prevent this and keep this person healthier as a result of intervention, that this will help to save that person from having lifelong or end-of-life issues that would affect them and the cost of health care?
Representative Ellmers, I think that is a key point of HR 4153. We're talking about not just saving life and saving people from suffering, but this is an area in which, an ounce of prevention is worth many, many, many pounds of cure. Mm-hmm. So these are expensive illnesses to treat. These take a significant toll on a very important sector of our society, which is our, bright, otherwise healthy young people. My sense is that what we will learn from this pilot program is that this is really where the future is, to say, let's get ahead of the curve here and not just continue to sort of do the remedial care that we've been focused on. Prevention
Focus on prevention. Well, thank you again so much. And again, thank you to our panel. This has been a very, very good subcommittee, but I've learned a lot as well. So thank you.